Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today for breakfast we are going to make a potato O'Brien's, which is kind of like a skillet potato with sausage and fried eggs, and then we are going to make buttermilk sourdough discard pancakes. So first we're going to start with getting our sausage ready for our potato O'Brien's. So I'm just going to throw in a couple frozen sausage in here. Let me put a little bit of butter to fry them up in as well. So I'm going to put this in my nonstick skillet, and we're going to add in some frozen sausage. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I think we'll do 6. Okay. And we're going to let those start to cook. And while those are cooking, we are going to prep up our potatoes. So I'm just going to get rid of some of the outside skin. Not all of them, but my kids aren't like the biggest fan of it. So I'm just going to get rid of the majority of it, but I'm not going to do a full peel on my potatoes. And we're going to dice these up fairly small so that they cook up a bit faster than if you were to do a larger dice, and they would need a much longer cooking time. So get there, and then I'm just taking my knife along the edge and just kind of getting a little bit of the outside. There's still plenty of peel on it, but my kids will be a bit happy instead of having a bunch of peel. Okay, do one more. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to do a nice simple dice on here. So I'm going to probably make 4 to 5 slits down so that each piece is about that thick. And then I'm going to split it in half. That way you have a nice flat base that you can push down on your cutting board. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing across. So now you have essentially a French fry. And then we're just going to cube it. Easy peasy. And you want to just make sure your potatoes are about as even in size as possible so they all kind of cook up and crisp up at the same time. So you just want to avoid any really big pieces. So again, we're going to go through, got a little potato there, and make our little slices. And then I always like to put it in half. That way you have a nice flat surface down. That's to prevent your potato from rolling over and cutting yourself. We'll make our little slices. Perfect. And there we go. These breakfast potato O'Brien's remind me as a kid when we lived in Iowa. Occasionally we would go to either Perkins or Village Inn on the weekend. And they always, I think it was Village Inn, always had these skillet breakfasts you could get, which were, just fried potatoes, peppers, onions, and then you got to pick either bacon or sausage. And then they were served with 3 pancakes on the side. But they were so delicious and so good. And I was always excited. And they always came in that, oval, big black skillet. There we go. And do one more. Cut through here. So this is very similar. We're going to serve it with some fried eggs as well. So it's very similar to what I had growing up. There. We've got our sausages frying up and our potatoes chopped. There we go. Cut that one in half. Let's see how for my sausages, we're not going to just keep them in the circle patty. I will crumble them up once they start to kind of get defrosted. My sausages were frozen, so we'll crumble them up, and then we're going to cook our potatoes in it. And this is going to be for our potato O'Brien's, which are like skillet potatoes. And then we're going to serve those with fried eggs. And then we're going to make some buttermilk sourdough discard pancakes for breakfast. So it just kind of reminds me of the skillet breakfasts we used to have as a kid. I was always so excited because, growing up, I was the youngest of 10. And most of my half brothers were out of the house. But my mom had 7 of her own. And so it was a big family. and going out to eat was rare back then. I mean, I even now, if I think about it, going out to eat as a kid was rare compared to how often people go out to eat. And whenever we were like, oh, we get to go to Village Inn, and he was so excited. I always was so excited. And then it was deciding, do I want the bacon skillet or do I want the sausage skillet? Do I want chocolate chip pancakes or regular pancakes? You know, it was just always so exciting as a kid because it was such a rarity. Where I feel nowadays, like people go out way more than we used to.
You have a question? What brand of sausage is that?
It's Swaggerty's. I got it from Aldi's. I typically there's Goosebees, which I get from Costco. I just always buy whatever the big freezer pack is. So I always have sausage in my freezer so that we can cook up like a nice breakfast. And, you know, since we are kind of a larger family, we've got, 5 kids. So we want to just make sure that we can, whenever we're in a pinch, I know I can make something. There we go. So now I'm just kind of chopping up my sausage. So it's kind of like a sausage crumble. You could have used ground breakfast sausage if you wanted to, but this works just as well. Perfect. And while this sausage is just about frying up, I'm going to turn my heat down to about a medium to a 6. And then I'm going to throw in my peppers so that they can start to kind of crisp up. And these are just sweet peppers, not spicy. I like to use like sweet peppers or red, yellow, and orange bell peppers over green. I feel like green peppers are just a bit bitter for my liking. Okay. Beautiful. Now that we have our sausage in here. Perfect. We're going to put a little bit of butter. We're going to melt it because we're going to put our potatoes in here and we're going to just let them kind of sizzle up. So I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of butter to melt it down. I really like to use butter with my skillet potatoes. Sometimes I'll add a splash of olive oil, but I feel like it just gives it a kind of a richer flavor. And so what I'm doing is I'm pushing all my sausage and peppers to one side because I really want to coat my potatoes in the butter so that they can start frying and crisping up. And that way you don't have to use multiple pans. There we go. Just going to spread it around. And then once we have the potatoes in, our skillet's just going to sit for a while, cooking up the potatoes and frying it through. And then we'll add seasonings and our green onions at the very end. There we go. Get all of these up. And then I'm just going to toss them real quick in the butter. Jumping. And then we'll mix everything together. But this is just to make sure the potatoes get a nice coat on it because we want them to get a nice kind of crispy skin on it, like, homemade hash browns. And then we will make our Buttermilk Discard pancake batter. Okay, now let's mix these up. Flip all of that around. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay our potatoes out flat. And I have my skillet on a medium. And we're going to just start crisping them up. And the trick is to let them cook for a few minutes at a time before flipping them so they get a nice crispy shell on the bottom. Okay, you grab an egg from over here because we're going to need this in our pancakes. Let's start with our Sourdough Discard Buttermilk Pancakes. So we're going to need 3/4 cup of buttermilk. I'm going to give it a good shake. If you've ever worked with buttermilk, it's a bit thick. So we need 3/4 of a cup. If you don't have buttermilk, you could always use just regular milk. But the buttermilk just gives it that nice, richer tanginess to it, which will go great with the sourdough. So I've got 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. Also, a little hack, if you don't have buttermilk, you could use milk with, or half and half, with a squeeze of lemon in it, will help the kind of curdle up and mimics the flavor of a buttermilk. And then we're going to use 1 cup of sourdough discard. So we're going to feed this so we can, afterwards, after we discard it, so we can make some more sourdough bread. Okay, I'm going to give it a nice stir because a lot of times in the fermenting process, liquid comes up to the top. That's called a hooch. So I just like to mix it back in because it has all the good natural lactic bacteria. And we're going to use 1 cup of sourdough discard. And it's okay if it's active. We're not actually using it as our rising agent. So if you just have a lot after you fed yours, you could use active sourdough discard if you wanted to. So we've got 1 cup. I'm going to put this over there so I can clear up my space. And then we're going to give this a nice stir. And we're going to stir the buttermilk into our sourdough discard. And what we're doing with our pancakes is we're starting with all the liquid first, and then we'll add in the dry. Okay. And then we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Unlike with waffles have a lot more butter in them because they want that crispy ridges. Pancakes don't quite have as much. I'm going to turn my skillet down to a 4 because I hear it sizzling. And then we're going to mix in 1 egg. Perfect. I'm going to pop it with my spatula, and then I'm just going to mix it in because I want to do most of the mixing before we get to the flour. The flour you want to just barely mix until they're combined. Otherwise, you'll get a little bit of a stiffer pancake, and we want a nice, soft, fluffy pancake. There we go. Now, let me grab my measuring spoons, and we are going to put in some vanilla, and then we'll do our rising agents. So for our vanilla, we are going to use a teaspoon of vanilla. That just gives it a nice kind of sweet flavor to it. Because most of our sweetness in our pancakes are going to come from the syrup or whatever you decide to put on them. But I do like to have just a little touch of sweetness come through. So we have 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we are going to add in 2 tablespoons of sugar. So not very much sugar in it because, again, all the sweetness is going to come really from the syrup or what you decide to put on yours. There we go. Slide this out of the way. And now I'm going to give this a nice stir. Perfect. Just to mix it up. Then we're going to put in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Perfect. And then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of baking powder, followed by a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And this is what's going to give our pancakes their little pop. So 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. There we go. And then as soon as I mix this up, you're going to actually start seeing the chemical reaction that occurs between the baking soda and the sourdough. It really makes it start to fluff up and bubble, and it gets much puffier. And that's just kind of like your, I like what back in the day when you would do vinegar and baking soda reactions, but do you see how bubbly it is? That just reacts together. I'm going to do a quick flip on our skillet here. And we've got starting to get a little bit. I haven't added any of the spices to it because I like to add the spices towards the end. Otherwise, a lot of times they can burn to the bottom of your skillet and they'll get stuck there instead of on your potatoes. So I'm going to push it down. I'm going to let it cook up nicely. Okay. You can even see my batter has almost doubled in size from just adding the baking soda to it and its chemical reaction. And now we're just going to add in 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And we're just going to mix it until it's just very combined. And that's our pancake batter. Super simple, super easy and delicious. While I'm mixing this, I'm going to turn on my skillet. This is like my Hexclad 12-inch griddle pan. Has like a nice flat ledge, which is great for flipping pancakes. And we're going to warm that up. Because the trick with pancakes is you need a nice warm griddle, but you don't want it to be too hot because then you'll burn your pancakes. So we're just kind of mixing it until the flour is just barely mixed. You don't want to over mix it because you want a nice fluffy pancake. There we go. And I'm just making sure no more flour pockets. Perfect. Okay, let's get a little bit of butter on my griddle. I know it's a non-stick, but I always like to add a little bit of butter because I find that I like that little butter crust on the pancake that you get. You don't need much. And you don't want to add too much because then the milk solids will burn on your skittle. We're just going to go around nicely and melt our butter up as our skillet is warming up. And I'll start when I'm cooking them. I start on a higher temperature and then I will start to lower it as I notice it's cooking faster. That way I can keep a nice, perfect golden brown pancake versus one that goes brown like super fast and then is doughy in the middle. There we go. We're just melting it all up. And then I find when you're doing pancakes, you want to use a really thin spatula. So I've got like here's 3 different spatulas here. These 2 are not as good because you can see they're much thicker. This one I can really scoop under and do the flip over, which will make it easier to flip your pancakes. That way you're not messing up everywhere and feel defeated before you've even finished. Okay, I'm waiting to see how my butter is starting to sizzle, which is perfect. I'm going to rotate my pan just a little bit, make sure it gets evenly heated up because I do know that my skillet or my stove heats up a bit more here. And then what I like to do with my batter when I'm scooping is I like to use a 1/4 cup scoop. And that way my pancakes turn out as fairly uniform as possible. And I never try to do too many. I typically only do 3 on my skillet at a time, simply because, flipping pancakes is not the easiest thing in the world. It's the same thing with like frying eggs. So there's no need to overwork yourself. And I find that the inner part of your skillet is your hottest. And so if I can keep my 3 in the inner rings as far, instead of spreading them out, they cook evenly together, which is what I want. So I'm going to turn my skillet down just a little. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to give these potatoes a little flip. And you can see we're getting this nice golden crust on them. And what I'm doing is I'm not really mixing them around as far as I'm just flipping everything over. There we go. Perfect. I'll push this down.
And you have a question about the batter. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth.
No, you actually want a lumpy batter. A lot of people make the mistake of over mixing their batter. So here, you can zoom in and it's really lumpy and chunky. Part of that, it's not that I have big clusters of flour in there. That is just the butter kind of curdling in the coldness and everything. You don't want a smooth batter because a smooth batter will either lead to a really stiff pancake instead of a not nice and soft, fluffy one. So it's kind of like with biscuits and with scones. You don't want to overmix. Same thing like cakes. There's, I think people think, oh, it needs to be perfectly smooth. You don't need it to be perfectly smooth. You want it to be kind of chunky and then makes for the best pancakes. Okay, let's see. What I like to do when we are cooking is when you're ready to flip it, you will start to see bubbles pop through. So you can see I have like some on the edges starting to pop through. Those are the air bubbles releasing out. And once they pop through the middle, you know that your inside of your pancake is cooked. If you like flip it prematurely, that's when your pancake's going to fall apart. So you want to make sure you see some bubbles. That's why you want to make sure your skillet's not too hot, because if your skillet's too hot, your pancake's going to burn on the bottom and you won't get the bubbles through, but then you're going to be rushing to flip it because it's burning. So low and slow is the best route to go with our pancakes. I'm going to just give them a nice little thing. And another way to check is you'll be able to see kind of around the very edge of your pancake, you'll be able to see a light goldenish look to it. And that's when you also know that your pancakes are ready. So you can even see, like, if you go under it, you see how it doesn't really lift. It just falls to the side. That also is another key that it is not ready.
Got a question of what's mixed with the potatoes.
So yes, our potatoes over here, we used 3 russet potatoes. We did kind of a mock peel on them, not completely. And then we diced up, these are red and yellow sweet peppers. So we diced them up. And then we have sausage, breakfast sausage, that we kind of crumbled up, and we're cooking them and frying them in a little bit of butter. And then we will add in some green onions towards the end. And then I'm going to add in some garlic salt, onion powder, black pepper, and table blend for seasonings, but you don't want to add them in right away, because what happens is they will burn and get stuck to the bottom of your pan. Even if you're using a non-stick pan, they get stuck underneath it and they crisp up, and then your potatoes will burn. So I always add them at the very end, and that way the flavor really sticks. Okay, these pancakes look like they're about ready for their first flip. Let me make sure I can get my spatula underneath. Perfect.
You have a question, what's the difference between garlic salt and garlic powder?
So garlic powder has no salt in it at all. It's just the juices from garlic that have been dehydrated. And that's actually, it's not garlic powder, it's onion powder. So this is the juices from onion that have been dehydrated and then powderized up. So it's a great option if you're trying to keep your sodium levels low. That's a great way to add a boost of flavor, but minimize the amount of salt you're adding.
And the number one question you always get, is there anywhere your recipes are written now?
Yes, we have been posting them on like the link in our page. And we've kind of posted a little short for it. I get to them and write them down as quickly as I can, but it is just hard for me to get every recipe out like the same day or within a week. But we do always post our videos, so you can always go back and refer to them and watch them and then write down the ingredients real quick. That will get you my recipes faster than me trying to get them out to you. I am trying to, but I got 5 kids and it's a bit hard. And so much of my cooking is like improvising, like, you know what I mean? I'll tell you as I'm putting it in because I see the visual amount. But it is hard when it is like, as you get more comfortable with cooking becomes like a feel. It's not so much measure, measure, measure. Now with baking, yes, it's measuring, but with what you're like actual savory foods, it's more of a feel. Okay. Beautiful. You see how the second side cooks so much faster than the first? So I'm going to turn my skillet down, but we've got our first 3 beautiful buttermilk sourdough discard pancakes. Now, again, between our pancake layers, I just added a teensy bit of butter.
You need to do a cookbook at the end of the year.
I know. I do need to do a cookbook and stuff like that. And I'm working on it. You know, I will say my kids, they keep me on my toes. It's really youth sports. If you have kids and you haven't gotten into the youth sports yet, it's chaos. Like we have soccer today, even though it's like a tornado storm out there, but they're not canceling it yet. And I'm like, please just cancel it. But both my daughters have like 6 hours of soccer. They're on like the Olympic development program team here in Tennessee. So they do these like trainings once a month. and it's great for them. But I'm like, ugh. And then we have basketball and gymnastics, and there's always just so much going on.
You have a couple questions. Have you ever made lemon pound cake pancakes? And also, do you ever just throw away your discard?
I've never made lemon pound cake pancakes before, but that actually sounds delicious. And then I rarely ever have to throw away my discard because I'm always making something with it, like muffins, scones, cookies. I found a way to make so many different things with my discard that I don't need to throw it away.
Two more questions. What size is the measuring cup you're using for the pancakes, and are you in the Nashville area?
Okay. First one, I'm using a 1/4 of a cup, which I find makes the perfect size pancake. And then we are actually just south of Nashville. We live in Williamson County. So Nashville is like, I can throw a rock and we're practically there.
And Nicole has asked twice now. I missed it the first time, I think. Where are the plates from?
The plates are Target's. They are discontinued. My kids broke one, and I'm like, oh, I need another one, but I believe they're, what is it? Threshold Studio McGee. I love these plates. They're really heavy though, but they are discontinued. Trust me, I've got the little plates and I've got a couple other things in. Oh, my cauldrons. Everybody loves these cauldrons. These are actually from Joanna's Gaines Hearth and Hand, but everybody loves our cute little cauldron. And I love them because they're like a little cauldron. Makes me feel like I'm like a superpower. Okay, nice and fluffy. Turn my pancake down, and now I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I have turned my skillet down each time. So I started at a 6, now I'm at about a 3, because once the pan gets hot, I want my pancakes to cook all the way through before they get, so they don't burn them, because nobody wants burnt pancakes. But now we are ready to start seasoning our skillet potatoes, and they can do their last final crisping up. So we're putting in this was about 4 green onions chopped up, or about a 1/4 of a cup. You could use chives as well. That's a great option. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of sprinkle a dusting of garlic salt over, which is going to be maybe about a teaspoon. Now, garlic salt is not as salty as regular salt, so it doesn't pack quite as much of a punch. And then I'm going to use Mrs. Dash's table blend, which is just kind of an herby blend. And we're going to use maybe like a 1/2 teaspoon. Not much. Black pepper, we'll probably use about a 1/2 teaspoon. I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top. But again, that's what I said. It's more about a feel than an exact science. I look at how it falls, and that's what it is. And then we're going to use the onion powder. This is going to give you such a savory flavor to our potatoes without having to put a whole onion in there. And this one we'll probably use about a 1/2 teaspoon. And now that we have all of these potatoes fried up, I'm going to start flipping them to kind of mix these seasonings in. And then they'll kind of crust up, but I don't have to worry about them burning and then giving a burnt taste on my potatoes.
Have you ever tried smothered potatoes?
Ooh, I have not tried smothered potatoes. That sounds delicious, though. Perfect golden brown on these pancakes. This one, I think, needs about 30 seconds more. Let me get the butter ready for our next round. And I'm going to put that on while I take off this pancake. And we're going to spread it around. Smothered potatoes. Now, with smothered potatoes, is that like smothered in a sausage gravy or smothered in cheese? I feel either one would be delicious. There we go. So we're just going to spread a little bit of the butter again around on our skillet. And you can see, even though I'm on a low, my butter melts fast because the skillet is nice and hot. There we go. And put this guy right there. And I'll probably be able to make maybe 1 or 2 more after this with my pancakes. batter. So it does, I will say this makes probably almost a dozen pancakes, give or take, which is perfect because the pancakes aren't just the star of today's show. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to do some fried eggs. So I'm going to move. My biggest problem is I don't have enough. I need a bigger stove, but they do not make electric stoves that are bigger. Like, unless you buy a commercial one, which I think is a problem. You can get a gas stove that is, 40 inches, 42, 50, but standard stoves, it's like 30 inches is what you get.
That's it for the smoked potatoes. It's either plain gravy butter or sausage gravy.
See, delicious. Okay, for our eggs, we're just going to do a simple fried egg because the way I love it is a fried egg that you put on top of your skillet potatoes so that when you break into the yolk kind of covers up your potatoes with that delicious, if you like that type. Otherwise, you could do scrambled eggs, but I love a fried egg on top of my potatoes. It's just delicious. Okay, I like to rotate my skillet because I will always say this edge seems to cook a lot hotter than this edge. And I feel like everybody's kitchen has those little quirks where their like oven, of course, like cooks farther on the back or on one side. Sometimes growing up, my parents' stove was not level and we didn't realize that, but everything leaned and it was a good lean. And, but it made it impossible to cook in that oven underneath because like the cake would like leak out. There we go. Perfect. Now what I'm going to actually do, we're going to do a little switcheroo since my potatoes are almost done. That way they don't need quite as much heat. I'm going to put my skillet here. And similar to with like pancakes, using a thin spatula for your fried eggs makes a big difference too. So let me turn that one down to medium and we're going to turn this one up.
So far, you're 2 out of 3 on success.
Yes, I will tell you, I am notoriously bad at flipping eggs or doing it. I can leave them in and do sunny side up, but I like my eggs over easy, which means you take your sunny side up and you flip it over and you give it a quick fry on the other side, gives you that nice little butter crust on it. But again, mine break all the time. And most of the time it's because I am too rushed. I don't take the time that it deserves. I'm a person who I'm always going. And sometimes things take a delicate touch. And that's one thing about me. Nobody ever says I'm delicate. There we go. And I know people don't have a heart attack. We are using a lot of eggs, but we have a big family. We have 7 mouths that we need to feed this morning. So this is like the whole paycheck going into the frying pan. There we go. And let's cook these guys up. Beautiful. And I already can tell I'm going to have an issue with cracking one of them because it's too close to the other or to mixing one of them. Okay, let's get these pancakes flipped. Beautiful. Look at them, nice and golden brown. I'm going to try to get all of my pancake batter down here. What I'm probably going to end up doing is just make one big pancake with the rest of the batter, which won't really be that big. Do you ever remember, like when we were a kid, you would get those whole plate pancakes that would then have like a chocolate chip eye and a little banana for the smile? Now, where's my salt? Here, I like to salt my eggs before we go in. So I'm going to just put them on here, and we're going to sprinkle them over the top because when you fry them on the other side, this is your chance to get the salt on them. And you don't need much. Perfect.
Somebody that loves a pan saying they need that pancake pan.
Yes, this is the best pan ever. It was one of those things I bought as a whim when I bought my Hexclad set, because if you've looked into the prices of Hexclad, it's definitely pricey. And so I bought like a 3-piece set of the pans, which here's the big one, middle one, and then I have a smaller one. And at checkout, they were like, add this 12-inch griddle pan for $99. And I was like, will I use it? I use it all the time. I use it for my grilled cheeses, my Swedish pancakes. It gets used anytime I'm making anything that doesn't have a sauce that I can crisp up. I use this pan. I love it. And it's much nicer than some of those, like you can buy the big like rectangle griddles. But the problem is on an electric stove, you don't have 2 equal burners most of the time. And so the big rectangle pans just don't work for that.
You got a question for pizza?
Oh yeah, you know what? I've never done a pizza on here. I do have a small little pizza oven that I use, but I could actually see, you could probably do like, especially if you were reheating pizza. I don't know if you could do like a cook from the base, but you know how they say reheat pizza on like a frying pan instead of in the microwave, and it will be crispier and nicer. I could see that you could easily reheat a pizza here, or you could crisp it up and then pop it in the oven for a quick melt. Okay, where's my little butter pat? Here it is. Got just enough. Perfect. I'm going to turn my eggs down to really low since they are almost done. And we'll do a quick flip on them. And here is my last. It's not going to be a super huge pancake, but we don't want it to go to waste. And that's the nice thing about this batter is it's really easy to scoop out. Okay. You guys ready for the moment of truth?
That's your massive pancake?
Yeah, it's not that massive. Okay. You got to cut it around. And then what we're going to do is a quick fry on each side.
You let it do.
Now you're jinxing me.
Almost perfect, no pressure.
Oh. Ah! I told you there was going to be one that gave me it. And then, quick is you don't actually cook them on that side. This is just going to fry up that so you don't have a super runny yolk, which I love. Like not the runny yolk. Not the yolk. I lost mine. There we go. We're back on. It's a super runny yolk or whites. So here is how we're going to eat today's breakfast. Look at these lovely skillet potatoes. So you're going to have a nice serving of that. And then we're going to add our egg. So we have it right there. And look, you cut it and you bring it and you see how the yolk goes down into the potatoes. Delicious. And then we're going to serve with pancakes. Easy peasy squeezy, delicious buttermilk sourdough discard pancakes with potato O'Brien's and eggs over easy. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for brunch today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, feel free to comment or send us a message if you have any cooking questions or any recipes you would like us to try. Again, thanks so much for joining us.